Chapter 2 The Journey 4 nights later. "Drake, wake up!" Ariana yelled from downstairs. "Every day the same day," Drake said, forgetting what day it was. Drake crawled out of his bed in an uneasy way. He was still trying to wake up properly until he realized it was Friday at last. In a way, he was quite excited about the journey to Scotland. For another dull day at school, he was not. Drake collected all the things he still needed to pack, and when he did, he ate, drank, grabbed his bag, jacket and keys, and said goodbye to his mother. As Ariana was wiping away a few tears, she watched her son leave for a whole week, hoping he'd return home unharmed. As usual, Drake left his home too late. When he arrived at school, he saw his class entering the bus already. Drake hastily put down his bike and locked it. "Drake, hurry up!" Haru yelled, who had almost entered the bus. "Phew, right on time," Drake said while panting. Drake was the last student to enter the bus. "Who do we have here?" a big muscled boy said as Drake walked by. "As usual, you disappoint me by being on time." "Oh, shut up, Rex," Drake answered. Drake walked on while annoyed, and continued until he reached the back of the bus. The bus was already almost full, and there were barely any seats still available. But in the back, there were still 2 available. The third seat in the row was occupied by a girl who sat alone. "Hi, Julia. All right if we sit here?" Drake asked. "No, go ahead," Julia answered. Drake and Haru went to sit next to Julia, and they waited until the bus would finally leave. After a few noisy minutes, the bus took off at last. They watched as they were leaving the school's terrain and felt as if they'd never return. They were still on the brink of finding out whether that was true or not. And like that, they left the city of Amersfoort, a place in the center of the Netherlands, Drake's home at that time. "All right, good to see all your happy faces," Karen spoke. "First, we're off to Calais. As soon as we get there, stick together. We don't want anyone being left behind, do we? All right, good. Try to amuse yourself until we get there. Safe trip, everyone." Karen went back to her seat. Drake sighed. "What is it?" Haru asked. "I am getting the feeling that this trip won't be much different than all the other trips we've ever been on. I wish there was more excitement to be found, more adventure." Haru didn't exactly know what to say. After having driven for hours, they finally arrived at Calais. When they were allowed to enter the train, they drove into the cargo section of the train. At the planned time, the train left. An hour passed. Drake and Haru had spent their time in an empty part of the train, but they couldn't escape boredom anywhere. "What do you think we'll do in Scotland?" Haru asked. "No clue," Drake answered. They stopped talking when a voice sounded through the intercom. "Karen speaking. All students back to the bus. We're almost there. Messy." They rose and started walking to the bus hastily. As soon as everyone was back in the bus and all the other vehicles ahead of them had exited the train, they followed. They entered a completely new environment, more nature, higher hills, but they continued on their path and left Folkestone while headed for Scotland. Once again, Karen gave a little speech, this time about where they would be staying for the night. The students felt like the journey took ages, and only at nightfall they finally arrived at a cheap motel in Scotland. Their room keys were handed out, and as soon as Drake and Howard took off and entered their room, they dumped their bags on the floor and laid down on the beds. The next day, they had another few kilometers ahead. Only a few found it all worth their time.